How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of Trailmakers Creations by ThatDomGuy. Today we're going to be building a basic hovercraft. So hovercraft are basically picture a wet ice cube on wet ice. So you're not going to get any traction or control from the ground. And they love to flip over as well. It's kind of like buoyancy in water. If your center of gravity is too high, it's just going to want to flip over. And another negative to the hover pads is that once you gain speed, the hover pads will actually want to sink down to the ground, like really weak suspension, until they're literally touching the ground and not doing any good. So there is a workaround for that as well. So let's go into build mode here, and we are going to start with, again, our basic platform. So you want to try and, again, build symmetrical with hover pads usually, unless you're going to be placing a lot of them in specific places. For this example or this tutorial, we'll just build a basic hover pad with, say, 4 or 6 hover pads, just so you get the basic gist. So what I normally like to do is hover pads found in your engines. Basically space out around one panel where you want them. Select these two here, copy them over to this side. Select one of these, bring it out front. So that'll be plenty of lift for something as small as that. We can add whatever seat we want to add. Again, I'm going to use a armored seat, just so that we can't be thrown from it. It's always a good one to use for testing. And always keep in mind what seat you might need later. If you're going to go with a diving bell or something, it's going to require more space width-wise. So, once we have our seat attached, hover pads are weird also in the sense that they're always on. As soon as you start, if you want to start with them off, you have to put a sensor triggering them to turn off, basically. So let's see if we'll build that into the world. As soon as you get in the seat, you can see they automatically come on. Now that's with the seat controls. You can see it wobbling a bit. Forwards, backwards, left and right. So if we had any kind of thrust or speed on that, it's going to push us straight forward. And not unlike being on the water with pontoons or buoyancy, it's going to want to push your top down. You'll just end up flipping. So the fix for that, go back into build mode here. We'll move these one space ahead. We'll come down here to our mechanics section. Grab a couple of small hinges. Rotate them around so that our green arrows are facing up. Always remember that green is the default direction. If you have sensors hooked up to your pistons or servos, it's going to automatically want to rotate it along the green axis or the green arrow. So once we have these two, now all we need to do here is select both of these and configure them. The speed we can drop down to 0.1. Now the angle we only need to be minor, so we're going to go with, let's try 10 degrees. And we're also going to set hold position, so that even after we hit the key for green here, we're going to say that it's going to be space. It'll toggle it so that it completes a complete cycle, 10 degrees, and then it'll just stay at 10 degrees. Get rid of that so we have no other controls on it. So by setting hold position, basically once it completes this, gets to this 10 degrees, it's just going to stay at that position regardless of whether I hit space or not. So anything that you want to move and then stay in that position, don't forget to hit hold position. Alright, so once we have that set like that, let's build it into the world and have a look. I'll sit into the seat, I'll hit space. And you'll see we get that bit of angle on the front there. Now what that's going to do is, I'll go into build mode here. So we'll just put a couple of small thrusters on the back here, just to give us a little bit of propulsion. Again, always trying to think of where our center of gravity is on our build, and try and keep things even. So those are set to space, which is perfect. So we'll build that in, we'll jump in, hit space. So you see that that slight angle on the front of that hover pad is actually going to counter the top force of the thrusters pushing the front end down. As long as you're going at least 40 kilometers an hour, I believe it is, you can go over the water as well. Now you can also do this Same thing with the angled, with the hinges on your sides, if you have something lifting you from the bottom. And we'll do that to see what difference that's going to make. What I would do in this situation is, because I have these extra connection points down here, I want my hover pads to be as low as possible to the ground. So I would actually select these and drop them down one, because now we have those extra connection points from the two on the bottom. So, bring those down, do the same thing over here, see we just drop those down, and then we can select our hinges, drop those down. Try that. Build that into the world. We're sitting there. It might be a little bit too much angle on the side ones as well. If we're sitting at 15, you might want to drop those just to 5. You basically want to try. It's a great way to keep the center of mass of your vehicle the lowest point. And by just having it like it's sitting in a bowl. We'll select these, so they're at 10, so we'll drop it to the lowest angle you can get, which is 5. It should help a bit with that leaning. Jump in. So we have no steering at the moment, so one of the easiest ways to work with steering on a hovercraft is, again, because it's like wet ice on wet ice, is to simply use a helicopter engine. Try and find a center spot, make sure that there's nothing touching these connection points in the middle, around the center of it, so that's what's going to spin. The top will not spin, the bottom will not spin, but those connection points in the middle will. So we can see that there's nothing touching them here, so we'll set that here. We'll go to our configure. We'll set backwards, which is going to be counterclockwise, so once it's spinning counterclockwise, the torque is going to be clockwise, so that's actually going to spin us to the right, which means this will spin us to the left. You can adapt the speed. We'll leave it at 5, which is the default. We'll spawn that in. And as you can see, we now have the ability to rotate left and right. Now again, going too fast, a lot of the times those helicopter engines will give you too much torque, make it really hard to control. So, but that's the simplest way to add steering without adding any kind of fins or any other moving parts. Simply one helicopter rotor. Just tweak it for whatever power you need depending on the weight of your into the drink. The weight of your vehicle. You might need a little stronger, a little weaker, and try and keep it centered on your vehicle as well, so that you get even torque on the whole thing as you're turning, instead of it trying to turn the whole front, because then you can get some wild variations and erratic movement. So, if let's see, what else do we need? So from there, again, it's just a matter of adding aerodynamic pieces. Test that for balance. Make sure it's not too nose heavy, because like I said, they will compress. Now at any point in time, if you find that you need to add hover pads to your vehicle to take up any extra weight, if you start adding weight to either side or to the front and the back, and you find that your vehicle is actually leaning or sinking to one side or the other, add another hover pad or a couple of small jets facing upwards. But from that point, it's just basically a matter of whatever design you want. Always start small and keep adding, because you'll find it's incredible how many pieces you end up adding and how big your creations can get, even when you try and start really small, simply because of the limitations of the pieces, how you can put them together. So yeah, that's a pretty basic introduction to Hovercraft. I want to thank everyone for watching. Hit like if you enjoy what you see. Hit subscribe if you're not a subscriber already. And we will see you guys in the next one. Ciao.